Welcome to Remember Me by Intervivos, the show about living life to its fullest, leaving a legacy, and deciding how you will be remembered. And now, your humble team of expert planners taking the legal world by storm.
Hi, welcome to Remember Me. This is the show where we talk about leaving a legacy, planning your future, and deciding how you'll be remembered. I'm here in the studio with Mike Black. And, over the last couple weeks, we've been talking about how a family establishes, a power grid or power structure to pass on from generation to generation. It's not just about the stuff or the assets. It's about, the stories and the legacy of values of who they are and the relationships that they have and so on, and kind of perpetuating that. And so, that passing on of stories is something that's actually super important. We have a special guest today that's joined us from a company that really specializes in the transfer of people's stories and values through, life stories, oral histories, that sort of thing. And so, Karen Corbitt, thanks for joining us on the show. Karen's worked in this industry for a while, but Karen, tell us a little bit about, how did you get into helping people with their life stories, and then what is it exactly that you do now?
Okay, so I actually have a background in electrical engineering, and I actually got my master's degree at Stanford. And over the years, I've been able to work on some pretty exciting things. But at the end of the day, when you look at values and people and what makes people happy, I wasn't sure that the things that I was working on, although they were very interesting, was actually beneficial to mankind. And so it's kind of, how do you take technology, what we've got today, and make people happier? And I've done a lot of research on it, and I think what makes people happy and gives them a lot of self-satisfaction and carries on and becomes more valuable over the years, as opposed to maybe your phone that you're going to discard next week, is the actual stories, where you came from, what those people went through, the good times, the bad times, and what heritage you have.
Definitely. Yeah. So you work with a company called Emberall, and we've had the pleasure of being able to associate and work with Emberall, over the years. And so tell us a little bit about what is Emberall, what do you guys do as a company, and then what's your role with Emberall?
Okay, so the company, what it hopes to do is capture the oral history of individuals, and they want to do it, or we have a goal to be able to do that in the most convenient manner possible, in a manner that can have the most impact on people's children and future generations, and that can be easily shared and stored and organized, so that everybody in the family can get a hold of it. Everybody can share it on social media. And it's just super accessible. Perfect.
So, Mike and I were talking about this a lot over the last week, but Mike's never actually experienced Emberall, never worked with Emberall. So, Mike, have you ever sat down and heard somebody tell their life story or recorded it?
We sat down with my parents a little while ago and actually had them record it, and I need to find where that is. I think it's on a thumb drive somewhere, but I don't know where it is. So, I was just thinking about that as you're talking. We sat down with my parents. They told some stories, and I think we've got a DVD or something about it, but I don't know where it is. So, that's a little frustrating to me, because I know it's there, but that's the only thing I've done.
And I used to, back in college, I had a job actually selling, video histories to people, and it was really something that was really interesting. We'll get into, some of the benefits of, people doing their own life story and recording it and that sort of thing. But what we found was that it was very difficult for people to be able to afford it, because it was, $3,000 for a family to be able to, do a high quality video for themselves. And so now it's great to have solutions that are a lot more cost effective, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But Karen, tell us, what are the benefits of somebody recording their life story and their oral history? Like, why would somebody want to do that? Sometimes it sounds vain to say, well, people are going to care about my story.
There's a lot of benefits, and just the fact that you journal in any capacity. They've done a bunch of studies at the University of Austin in Texas, and they've done some studies, for veterans, and they've done studies for people in depression. And they have found that basically anybody who journals, they can actually clinically prove that their white blood cell count goes up, so their immune system increases, their depression levels go down, their anxiety goes down. And there's all these clinical benefits of journaling. So that's awesome for the person that does it.
And actually, Karen, because the history of kind of where this developed from, it was from that idea of journaling, right? Students keeping track of, where they were at day to day as they live life, and just telling about, what happened to them on a regular basis.
Well, that's right. So actually, the guy who had the seed of this company, who came up with the idea for it, his uncle had decided that he wanted to follow him for 5,000 days. So he started when this young man was 10 years old. He and his brother, he recorded every 6 months or so, and created actually a full-length movie over it. And they became superstars overnight, not because they'd done anything wonderful, but because they'd gone through all the basic problems, the emotional distress and everything of an adolescent. And over the course of that hour, you could see how that they pulled through it. And it just brought people a lot of hope and comfort. And it also helped the kids, because as the kids had to look back and see what they'd been through and where they'd come from, and it gave them hope moving forward. And that's when this oldest brother said, you know what, everybody should be able to have this experience.
Yeah. So, and then Hollywood, took their spin on it, and they made the Martian, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same concept. It's just the day-to-day telling of, what's happening. And, nowadays we call them vlogs, right? But,
right.
But I mean, why record, the ordinary, the ordinary stuff that happens that, maybe everybody else can relate to it because that's the exact same things that happen to them. But why is our posterity going to care about that?
Well, actually, they did this study back in 2001. It was a pretty extensive study, and it's been replicated. But the first one was at Emory University in New York City. And what the psychiatrists were trying to figure out is, what can we do best to bolster our teens? What can we do to lower the anxiety levels, to make them closer to their families, to perform better educationally? And they went through a whole bunch of different factors trying to find out, was it socioeconomic? Was it race-related? And what they found the common thread was in what they called successful teens, were that they knew their family stories. So if they had actually had some sort of oral tradition in their family where stories were passed down about their ancestors, and the best kind of stories were not all good or all bad, it was sort of, just basically the flow of life, the good times and the bad times, and look, see how you can make it through it. And actually 2 months after this happened, they'd done this, and they go, wow, this is a great comparison. Unfortunately, that's right when 9/11 happened. And they went back to all those kids that they had in the study to see how they were faring. And once again, the kids who knew their family history were doing okay. They were pulling through it. The other kids were pretty traumatized.
Interesting. There's a lot of benefits, I think, to that transfer of stories and values from generation to generation. We talk about the 7 generations, and that we're the connection between the 3 generations that came before us and the 3 generations that'll come after us. And I shared this story last week about being able to record my great grandfather's life story, and of course we've gotten copies of his memoirs that he passed to the family. But that recording of being able to see his face and hear his voice, and just, they weren't extraordinary stories. They were just, things that happened in his life, but it was just a special time to be able to sit with him and hear those stories. And then to be able to share that with, the rest of the family, was something that we consider, a precious possession.
No, I think that, you bring up a good point. You'd be able to see him. You can feel the emotion that he's feeling. And, sometimes you can't see that in written word. Because, I've got some stuff from one of my grandfathers. He wrote all these things down. It's all compiled. But you can't feel the emotion. You can kind of guess what he was feeling. But the emotion, you see it because, I think that's what good about my, the video that we did with my parents. We see their emotion.
Yeah, there are a lot of, people who have different opinions, but most of the time people say at least over 50% is nonverbal communication. So you get about 7% through words, maybe 30 to 40% through like the intonation of someone. So if you actually had like a tape recording, that's so much better than just that word. But if you can actually see their expression, if you can actually see how happy they were when they were telling the story, or how heart-rendering it was, that's what pulls your empathy in. So there's, people try to do studies on this to try and figure out why. But apparently, when we're looking at somebody face to face, it pulls in more of our connectors. We actually connect to that person a little bit more, and we empathize with them and feel that emotion with them. So
Karen, we're going to come back. We're going to come back in just a second from the break, and we definitely want to hear, how everybody can get a hold of being able to do their own life story. So we'll get back in just a couple minutes. Thanks for joining us on Remember Me. Hi, welcome back to Remember Me. This is the show where we talk about leaving a legacy and deciding how you'll be remembered. We're here with Karen Corbitt from Emberall. It's a company that helps people to capture their life stories and store it for the next generation. And, what we were talking about before the break was about why a family might want to do this type of thing. Back in the day, we used to do time capsules. And,
we did one as a family. And we pulled it out, and I can't remember half the stuff I wrote on those things. It's interesting.
You have these little letters that you write to yourself, and then you put in pictures and mementos of, stuff that happened during that year.
Yeah, we did a 20-year time capsule with my family. And I remember when my mom pulled it out, and we went through that. And it was kind of interesting.
It gives you kind of a snapshot of what life was like way back, when you did it.
Yeah.
And, what if you dug up a time capsule from somebody from, years ago, then you get a snapshot of their life, right? And so this is just the modern equivalent of it. I remember sitting with a guy who shared with us, completely unsolicited, right? But he shared this story. It was actually in church, but he said, my dad died last year, and we had the opportunity to record an interview with him where he was telling us about his childhood and about his life, and we put that into a format that we can watch regularly. And he says, every time I watch that, I can't get through it without crying. And it's the very best thing to help me remember my dad, because he died unexpectedly. And so you can't put a price tag on that.
You can't.
But, so Karen, tell us a little bit about, the concept of Emberall was to take this experience that I was sharing before the break that, often will cost thousands of dollars for a family to be able to do, and make it accessible for the everyday family.
Try and put it right into your pocket and run it off your phone. So basically, what we've been able to do is create an app that you can download right onto your phone, and you can do a recording. Now, you can record right now on your phone, but what it doesn't do is upload it automatically into your own private file in the order that you recorded it when you're trying to get a history. So let's say that you go and visit your parents, I don't know, on Sunday, have Sunday dinner with them or something, and they start telling a story. You can just whip your phone out, open it up, record it. It's there for the whole entire family. Then we, up there in that online album that you have in the cloud, you can share that cloud with as many people as you want to. They can have the entire video history. We also provide it in a DVD and USB format, so you have some hard storage. A lot of people worry about that sort of thing, and we try and do it at a price that will work for everybody.
Perfect. So compared to a few $1,000s to be able to have a professionally done editing process and have somebody record you. You whip out your phone, you do these recordings, and then you get it in a DVD form and everything. Sounds like you're a busy person.
Yeah, sorry.
But you get it in DVD form and everything, and the retail price for that, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but it's usually like $500, which is a fraction of what it would normally cost for something like that.
Right. And along with that $500, they do, we provide, that includes the DVD, the USB, the leather casing, the photo, the individual photo on the front. Basically, this is something you can leave on your coffee table and remember for a long time. So that's all included in that price. The other
so we've
thing
had some of our attorneys use this as a gift, right? And when you receive it, it's very, very personalized, very customized. But it's also something that you may only do once in your life, and something that's irreplaceable. That how do you match that gift, right?
Right.
Well, and I want to bring out one more feature that we have, because I think it's a strong feature, particularly in this day of social media, and that is, you have this entire history online. It's divided up into clips so that it's easily uploadable and downloadable to a lot of different formats. But one thing you can do is, for each individual clip, let's say it's your mom's birthday or something like that, and you wanted to share something on Facebook, and you're like, oh, I really want that story about her first date. You can go and you can categorized. You find that story about the first date. You just click on it, say, I want to share it on Facebook or Twitter. And immediately it's out there for all your friends to look at and smile as well. So there's a lot of powerful features built in to be able to share and enjoy and explore family history together.
That's something that's really valuable, because I remember talking with family not too long ago, and when we're talking about trying to preserve some of these memories, they say, oh, well, I'll start working on gathering everything so that we can write it into a book and we'll get it published. And like, well, great, but then the book sits on a shelf and nobody looks at it.
Right.
And it's just not as exciting. It's not as accessible.
Yeah, I've got one of those, kind of a homemade book, all these stories from my grandfather. And it sits there, and I don't read it very often because it's homemade. You can tell.
And even when you do read it, it's not the same, because you can't connect with it the same way as video.
Right. And it's not available.
Well, yeah. So first of all, you have to be able to find it, and you have to be able to find it for your dad and your mom, and hopefully your grandfather or whatever. So that makes it a little bit harder. But then the other thing is that you can't really share it. So if you have your book, maybe there was a book made for all of your siblings, but now you've got all of your kids, and then you have all of your grandkids, and who gets the book? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas this is some permanent storage online where you have everything accessible. Anybody can pull it up on their phone. Anybody can download it to their computer. You can share it with your cousin across town. You're not paying for any shipping costs, and you capture the emotion and the expression of the person telling the story.
So, Karen, before we kind of get to the promo that you have for us today, tell us your favorite story of somebody who's recorded their life history.
I have so many favorites, and definitely what I've recorded on my parents have been very meaningful. But I have done some recordings with veterans, and I'll tell you the one that gets me every time is there was a gentleman who served in World War II, and he was in combat. And he went over, he takes like a whole minute to say this, but he says he went over with 1,800 men. And there were about 20 that were able to come home. He was in a special unit working over there in, islands in the Philippines. And, they were doing, basically distracting so that other bombers and things could come in from the other side of the island. And all of those people died.
Wow.
And when you see his face and you see the emotion that comes out in that, it tells me more about what happened during World War II and the sacrifice our veterans went through than anything I can imagine.
There's nothing like hearing it from a live witness.
Absolutely.
And it just makes me think that the stories that we want to tell, the stories that we really want everyone to understand, is they're part of this family that has been through sacrifice. They've been through good times and they've been through bad times. And they can relate to that and draw strength from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like me listening to a veteran, it makes me proud to be an American. you know?
For sure. So Karen, would, in your opinion, you know, is there anybody's story who wouldn't be interesting enough for this type of thing?
I can't imagine anybody who doesn't have a story to tell. Like I said, I think one thing, like in history, if you go back and you look at history, you know, we might have some idea maybe what this king or this queen or this lord or this lady may have done a little bit. But if you talk about the common person, we don't really know very much.
Right.
How fascinating would it be to find out even what the peasant was doing or what the guy did who had a market in town? I mean, what would we give to have some of those histories come to life for us? And that's what I'm talking about in Emberall is we believe every person's life story has value and meaning. And that no matter how boring or whatever you think it is, it's going to be fascinating to your posterity.
Perfect. So in the last minute that we have here, Karen, can you tell us about the promo that you have for all of our listeners?
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to do that. And that is, you know, normally this entire package retails at $4.95, but we're super, super excited to be able to offer you a promo package that includes the online, all the recordings that you want to do for your album, getting that DVD, getting that USB, in that leather case with the photo on it, everything, including the mailing costs and packaging and all of that kind of stuff for $89. You can't beat that, you know, as far as journaling and putting that together and the value that's going to be for your family. I'm super, super excited. That's going to run through the month of July. And the promo code I think you're putting up on your website, it's all in caps and it's July K-Talk.
July K-Talk, $89 for what would normally retail for $500. Go to emberall.com. July K-Talk is the promo code you want. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining us today. We definitely want to talk more about exploring, you know, passing on these legacies, and we appreciate you taking the time. So, for all of you listening, make sure that you check us out online, and we'll see you next week.